On the 34th episode of Passion in Progress, we talked to seasoned cinematographer and director of photography, Andrew Barrera. What is up, Mercedes? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show, where we talk to people and what they're passionate about, and hopefully through hearing their inspiring stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions. Today on the show, we have a person that is amazing at creating probably the most stunning visuals through camera, Andrew Barrera.
That's very nice of you.
Director of photography, director, I believe you probably produce some things as well. You probably do a lot of the things that just has to do with video production. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. Great today, actually.
Can you give just a little background of what you do day to day, the kind of clientele and everything that you work with here in Austin and both in LA, just to give the audience an idea of the kind of productions that you are on set for?
I mean, I can tell you the boring side of it. Answering emails and hustling is, I mean, you know how that is.
Yeah.
You're a hustler. So, that's part of the job and getting the job, and then trying to make everybody feel confident that you're the one for the job is, I think, the hard part.
Yeah.
So
with business versus the creative side, how much would you say that you do the business end of things as opposed to actually having your hands on a camera?
I would say it's 50-50.
At this point? Okay. What about in the beginning?
My story is very different versus a lot of other people, only because
how so?
I did reality shows. And that is still my bread and butter. And not everybody in town wants to do them because they think it's a very lowbrow thing to shoot, which to me, I think weddings are worse.
From my standpoint, if you watch The Bachelor, I'm not into The Bachelor, but if I sit down and if my wife is watching The Bachelor, I get sucked in just because how they're the editors that work on that thing are so good at story. It's gotten to that point, and there's a reason why it's so big.
Off of that, the one thing I have learned, especially doing reality shows or even documentaries, especially documentaries, is content always trumps quality. It doesn't matter what type of camera you have, what type of lens you have. It could be $100,000 lens or $100,000 camera. If you don't have the content, it's not going to make it to air, especially on reality shows. I can be, I'll be recording, but looking, the camera's down because I'm talking to you, but I'm recording for sound. But the moment something hits the fan, they're going to use that shot of me looking down because of the audio as I tilt up and rack focus to get you in focus. Then if I don't have a recording and then get my frame and take your shot, they're going to end up using the crappier looking stuff because the content is better than the quality. In the end, the viewer does not necessarily really care about quality if the content is so good, and that's mainly for documentaries and reality for sure. I mean, I think that's the only place it applies to, but like The Bachelor, of course, that's something that, most of that's produced, but
I understand that, but I'm just talking about from the standpoint of just reality in general as a genre. In doing editing, I appreciate that kind of it takes a lot to keep such a mass audience's attention that they do for those kinds of shows.
Right.
For reality TV, can you actually talk about how you shoot that kind of stuff? Where if you, I don't know, let's say the scenario is you're shooting something at some house and it's between that something's going to go down between two people or whatever. Do you have a set place where they're like, hey, go stand over here and just capture the moment? What goes on a typical day during a reality TV shoot?
If you're shooting with two cameras, then it's a little bit easier because you can anticipate. But I think the biggest thing for most filmmakers shooting doc or reality is anticipating the action, shooting with both eyes open. If you can't follow what's going to happen or anticipate it, you're going to miss out on half the stuff, or a lot of it has to do with feel too. You may see something as a filmmaker that most people wouldn't notice, right? But if you see it and you start shooting that way, then you're the one shaping the story outside of
that's interesting.
Producer.
That's interesting.
And that's a really cool thing, especially in the reality and doc world, is I think filmmakers have more of a say than, producer. I mean, it's definitely a huge collective group. It's not just one thing. I mean, it's a huge team, but you have a lot to contribute in that aspect, and I think good filmmakers, especially in the doc world, come from reality and doc. I don't always necessarily recommend people, filmmakers, for certain jobs because they're not necessarily fast enough. You know, like if you could think on your feet and are quick and all that kind of stuff, you'll be a much better filmmaker than if you just shoot sticks, just shoot scripted. You know, you pigeonhole yourself into one specific thing. And again, that's why I don't necessarily like doing reality shows. I'll be honest. I've shot a lot of really crappy ones. I've shot a lot of really good ones. But I think you're a better filmmaker in the end if you can do them than if you're not. Because especially now, you know, on the corporate side, if you're doing commercials, they've become more lifestyle shots, right? Or even like the shoot that we did. Technically, it's a commercial, but it's also a lifestyle. You know, it's scripted, but there's a lot of reality.
It's a hybrid kind of thing.
Shoot that you're doing into that. You're thinking on your feet. You know, you're anticipating what's going to happen before anybody else really knows, because you're the one looking at it while everybody else is thinking of script and story and content. I mean, it's a feeling, you know. So yeah, I recommend people that come from that world more so. And I think that's a lot of just me being prideful with people who do that, because I feel their pain, because it's not always the best. But I don't think you should hinder yourself to just one thing. You know, if you do multiple projects, different types of shoots, you're more versatile in the long run, you know.
Can you talk about the past clients that you've worked with? Because I know you were telling me that you were shooting even something on your cell phone for McConaughey, and I noticed on your website you have some stuff with was it Mickelson? Phil Nicholson. Sorry.
Yeah.
He's not here in Austin, is he?
No. So I think what you're referring to is it was a golf commercial.
For Callaway.
It was for Callaway. It was I would say I think it was my first actual national commercial I did that was strictly a 30-second spot. Like, I've done a bunch of things that have aired regionally or even nationally, but it was like portions of stuff. Like, I've done stuff for Air Force and they put it into their commercial if they, you know, like one shot or whatever. But that one was a very specific, this is 2 30-second spots that we're going to air. I didn't meet him because what ended up happening was they had a whole nother crew in Arizona filming with him. And then they wanted to film Sergio Garcia and add him to the spot as well. So they hired a whole nother crew and a whole nother DP for that. So they really vetted who they were going to hire and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up having to recreate exactly what the other DP did in the lighting aspect of it. Not necessarily shooting, but like, you know, we had a steady cam and you know, we shot with the same type of cameras, but lighting was the same. So I had to like dissect it based on what they sent me and how they shot that one and literally recreate the exact same thing. So when you watch it, it looked like it was one whole spot. Yeah. So that's what I did on that.
Does that happen very often?
Yeah, more often than you would expect, actually. Especially on reality shows. I've had to recreate interviews exactly the way.
No way.
Yeah.
Like, so they've had to like go back to the same spot and do the same thing again?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a company in Austin that I used to work for, and they had a show called Heavy on A&E, or 600 Pound Life, which was also one of their shows. And they would have to interview these people. And, you know, they would do a type of interview and then a couple months later, realize that they need to go back and get some other words for them to fill in for the series. So we would have to go back, recreate that exact same interview based on a screen grab, not even a diagram of where the light was. It was, this is what it looked like. Make that happen.
And what if the people don't even look the same?
Right.
Did that happen?
Back then. Well, sometimes yes, it was like minor stuff, and you're like, it's not my fault. Like, I can't do anything about it. You know? But in the end, it ended up working how they wanted it.
So, what about McConaughey? Tell how you got into that.
Oh yeah. There's a sound guy I work with here in town. He referred me to do this job, and this was right when Facebook Live was only for celebrities. McConaughey's wife had a live cooking show, so we ended up I got hired full day rate to show up and film with an iPhone. And, with the lighting LEDs that they had, which were not color balanced for the massive amount of windows that they have in that kitchen. Mm-hmm. So I had blue light coming in from the windows, tungsten lighting from the LEDs with an iPhone. So I'm holding an iPhone. I made a little rig with a little light on it. And every time they wanted to see a tight shot of the food, I have to physically, and I'm sitting there looking at them like, I can't, this is an iPhone. Like, I'm not going to change the lens. And then like, well, she looks a little blue, can you change the white balance? I'm like, it's an iPhone. This was before they had apps that you can do it now. This was like straight up camera live,
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely an interesting experience. And I've shot on an iPhone for Snapchat during South by, like, it's a thing now.
Do you see that becoming more of the trend?
Oh yeah, especially vertical. Mm-hmm. And I think doing chive stuff, even like turning my A7 or even my Red sideways to shoot vertically is a thing. And I've learned to embrace the vertical portion of filmmaking because I have an iPhone, and I used to always think that I never want to see anybody shooting this way. I want to see them shooting horizontal. Yeah. Right. Now, because I have a kid, it's very, like, like I don't want to turn it sideways. So it's like I just shoot vertically, and I've embraced it. So like having to do that in my profession has been very difficult, but I'm getting used to it. So
yeah.
But iPhones and phones in general, they can do a lot now. So it's like I don't necessarily think that you should shoot with them, but if that's all you have, why not? Yeah, and especially now you can change it, the portrait mode, and get depth of field. I mean,
it's crazy how that works now.
They're much better than they used to be. The downfall is it makes your job harder to get the amount of money that you want to make on the job, because my little kid can just shoot with it, and those are some of the excuses.
It becomes a content thing as opposed to a camera thing,
right? Or it's like anybody could do your job. My teenager is a photographer, so I'm gonna let them do it. I'm like, well, then let your teenager do it, because I have a real job and this is what I do, but that's another argument.
No, I was gonna say, dive into that, because I feel like you're at the epicenter of that kind of thing where you have the quality and the skill set to do that, but there is something to be said for it. And like, I think I agree with it kind of, where like if you just have the iPhone and somebody that just like, if they filmed the thing and then you can get it within the frame, then like cool, especially from what you were talking about, where if the camera's down and then you get the audio, at least all that kind of stuff.
Content trumps quality.
Yeah.
A lot.
When you're approaching clients and everything, how is it current day as opposed to like maybe like even 3 years ago with wanting to bring your whole rig?
I've learned to let go on things like, only shooting with one type of camera or bringing all my stuff for no money kind of stuff. Like it's at that point, it's what's it worth it to me to make it easy. Like my easy rig, I should have made money on that day that we worked together, but it's a hassle for me to like, I don't want to always just carry this camera around. So the easy rig will make my life easier. Even though I'm not going to make a rental on it, it's worth it to me to bring it because I'm not going to screw up my back, right? So I think a lot of it just has to do with what you're comfortable providing without setting the expectation for your client that that's what they're going to get all the time for that amount of money. That's the hard part. I own Master Primes, which are $25,000 a lens.
Jesus Christ.
And we can go into that one a little later. But I took out a mortgage for that one.
You have more than one, too.
I have 5.
Oh, my gosh.
Did you not know this?
Well, I saw the picture of them on your website, but I didn't know how much they cost. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, they're very expensive. So what I'm getting at is like, on some jobs, like I want to bring them because I know the job is going to be kind of cool, that I want it on my reel. So I want it to look good. So I want to bring those lenses out. It's
beneficial to you
for almost next to nothing. It's beneficial to me. But when the client starts making that as the expectation that that's what they're going to get for that price, then you run yourself into a whole nother problem, but I mean, it's in the end, it's whatever you want. There's no rules. So you can, you don't want to saturate the market or rent your gear out for way less than what everybody else does, because then you're going to start pissing off everybody in the industry, and then you don't get referrals from them
because you're running them down.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to refer somebody that I know makes $200 on their red rental, because then it doesn't help me or anybody else that rents their red out for $600. It's just kind of unfair, and you don't want to compete in that sense. I mean, you want to make it a little bit competitive, but in the long run, like
what point in time did you have to make that decision? Was there some client that you like kept showing up for where you
I still do that.
You came with your camera and you have all your gear and all that stuff. Like at what point in time you running your videography and everything as a business were you like, no, I can't do this? Or at least to keep it sustainable.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's an ongoing thing.
It's an ongoing thing. I still do it. And I have a lot of clients that I love working with that I still bring them or, provide way less for them. And I don't mind doing that because I like them, I think it's just a give and take, man. You got to just pick your battles on what you feel comfortable charging. Because if you charge them and they get pissed, you're never going to work for them again, that kind of stuff.
But then it also becomes a quality, like then if you do actually produce
a really good thing,
the stuff
they're going to be like, I want to hire you more. And I'm going to come back and say, okay, just so you know, this and this and this, we're not part of that. And I provided it. So the next one will be more expensive, but it's a feeling and because you want to keep working. Right. And I'm more than happy to work for a day rate if I'm not doing anything. Right. Like if I'm not doing anything, especially in the wintertime, I got like 2 jobs. Yeah. I'll work way less or work for free. I'm helping a buddy out this next week for like a training thing, but
I'm assuming that comes back though. It's like, oh, hey, can you help me out with this whatever thing? Like down the road, it all snowballs on each other.
Yeah, it's a community. I mean, that's you don't want to piss off one person because then you probably won't work in the town again.
I love how it's like
it just depends on that type of person and who it is. But then there's other times you got to put your foot down and be confident in your ability of the stuff that you do, and then hope that it all works out in the end.
5 lenses that cost $20,000. Yeah. Jesus.
You know what Master Primes are? So they're Master Primes. I'm the only person in town other than rental houses that own those lenses, which has been very, very nice.
For the people that don't know what they are, like, can you explain why they cost so much?
Arri partnered with Zeiss. This was years ago. I think those lenses have been out for a long time. But yeah, they're $25,000 a piece. They're fast. And so the nice thing about these lenses is that they're all very consistent. Like the manufacturer, you can change one lens out for the other and not have any change in color differences, sharpness. They're pretty much perfect lens to lens, right? You can get like certain lenses that you put one of them on and you start shooting with it and you develop the look of that shoot. You put on another lens to get a tighter shot, and it's a totally different.
There might be
saturation difference, So then it puts more work in post to color balance it to get it to match, or it's like it's a little bit softer, And those kind of things don't necessarily help you in the long run, especially if there's huge differences. But if you have post budget, you can do it. Master Primes are great because they're flawless on all aspects of that. They don't flare that much. So some projects you want flares, so sometimes they don't rent for those particular projects. And it's a very fast lens. It's a T1.3, which is extremely, extremely fast.
And what he means by that is I'm assuming the depth of field. So the blurriness and where your focus is within the shot.
It's the amount of light that it allows it to come in. So it affects it's your aperture. So it definitely affects your depth for sure. I mean, if you move a centimeter, you'll be out of focus basically if you shoot it at a T1.3. But it allows you to shoot in next to nothing in low light with very little lighting, candlelit kind of stuff. And I mean, I think they've used those lenses on the Revenant. A whole bunch of films. So
I would assume so, considering they cost so much.
Yeah, I bought them because I knew rental on it, right? I knew that these lenses, I'll make money because they're desirable to rent, but they're all in that upper echelon of very expensive lenses to rent that a lot of people don't rent them. So it kind of just depends. Most commercials, like national spots, that's the type of lens they use because they want sharpness over anything else. But things change. I mean, I shot with Lomo anamorphics, which I cannot tell if I was in focus half the time, but the flaring was amazing,
Can you talk about how you got into the industry?
My first real gig was I didn't do the conventional way of things. I didn't do film school. I didn't immediately go into a production company. I ended up working for Disney World when I was in college.
Was it
the college program
film wise, or was it okay?
I was sales and marketing for Disney. So my first time at Disney, I was a lifeguard at the water parks. And then when you work there, you get an opportunity to do something more related to the field of study. And so when I graduated, I went back and did sales and marketing. So I was running around in a Disney soccer mom van, handing out brochures, talking to people, just developing a relationship with people, which I think helps in the long run.
Oh, yeah.
Because I graduated with a communication degree. It wasn't even a RTF program or whatever. But from there, I got to have the opportunity to shadow anybody within the Fortune 500 company, which is one of the nice things about Disney. So I got to shadow the head of marketing at Disney, who was basically in charge of when Extreme Makeover Home Edition comes, when the family comes to Disney World, and he provides a crew to film them enjoying the ride, that kind of stuff. So my first gig was a PA on that thing. And so he ended up hiring me for a couple other gigs like Super Nanny. Because of that, and developed a relationship with him, he knew all the production companies in Orlando. So he referred me to a company out there that was just doing a bunch of reality shows. So then I got hired as a office production assistant for this production company that had Hogan Knows Best, which was a VH1 series. True Life was a MTV series. Tiara Girls was a MTV series.
Yeah.
So I ended up working for them and working full time, even though I was still freelance PA. But yeah, I was a transcriber. So I sat there transcribing all the tapes that would come in every day, and I was the worst transcriber. I mean, I'm surprised I did not get fired on that job.
How fast can you type?
No, I could type fast. I kind of had like a dyslexia. I mean, I still have dyslexia, but I just not very good at, just retaining the information and doing it memorization wise and stuff like that. So most PAs in the bullpen, they would do 4 tapes a day. That minimum was 2 tapes. I hit the minimum every day. That's all I could do,
Jeez.
And when you talk about transcribing,
I would suck at that.
It was bad. Like you sit there with headphones, a VHS tape, and you type what type of camera it was, what type of shoot it is, time code, who's talking, what the shot is, what they say. And that's every line on an Excel spreadsheet. That was your transcriptions. I mean, you were the transcriptionist basically. But you were also a PA. That was a job. And it's still
I want to not do that.
$100 a day. That was my job. I think I did that for like 4 months, and then I think they thought I was so terrible at it that they ended up moving me to. I started hanging out in the equipment room and helped them like checking in gear and that kind of stuff. So I ended up like becoming a digitizer for them to put it into hard drives and then checking in gear. And at that point, I think they brought me on in the field as a field PA. And so that was like my first real gig as a production assistant, was in the field after working, almost a year. But yeah, and I got my ass kicked.
Hey, can you talk about how it was when you were first on set? Like how were you acting and everything? Like, because for me, one of my first gigs, well, excluding like stuff that I was doing during my collegiate years, but I was around like higher when I was doing audio. I was like on stage doing stagehand stuff, and like I had exposure to like, oh, here's all the famous people, and like how you act around like the kind of thing, like make sure you're make sure the things are in the place and you don't screw up your job so everybody else, so the whole thing doesn't like fall apart, you know? So how was it on the very first time, like when you got called up? I love how you called it bullpen. So you got called out of the you got called out of the bullpen. Like how was it when you were first on set then?
This was at the time before Google and iPhones. So, it's all trial by fire. Like I didn't go to film school, and film school definitely helps, but it's not a necessity. You don't need to go to film school to do the stuff that you do. You just have to do it. And it's always trial by fire. You go and you try to do it, and if you suck, and you may get hired back because you're a nice enough person, or not get hired back at all. It just depends. I mean, I'm sure people don't hire me because I sucked at something at some point,
Transcribing
definitely is one of those. But yeah, I mean, so like without Google, you had to make a nice binder for everybody that was going to be on this job, from addresses to one location to the other. And I'm talking like, this is how you get turn left here, turn right here, from airport to hotel.
Whoa, that's a legit thing.
Yeah, it was MapQuest at the time, right?
Yeah.
But like you had to know all the addresses, all these places is where we're going to go, and MapQuest to and from all those places, right? And then not only did you have to do that, and that was your pre-pro book, and sent it out with all your crew, you had to check in all your gear and make sure you have everything. And then when you finally get to your location, the night before, you had to prep all the gear again, prep all the tapes, pre-label every single tape. And this is at the time of tape stuff. It wasn't even hard drives or cards or whatever. So each tape had its own letter, right?
Yeah.
If you had 5, like my first gig, it was Fabulous Life Presents My Big Fat Fabulous Wedding on VH1. 5 camera crew. I think it was in South Carolina.
Tapes, that sounds...
With tapes. And I'm the PA, mind you. So, which is weird. They don't have ACs, or they didn't at that time. So I was the PA, AC, the driver, craft services, getting all the releases for the wedding. That was, a $500,000 wedding. So there's 200 people at this wedding kind of thing. And yeah, you got to pre-label every tape to the camera, B cam, A cam, C cam, whatever. All the GoPros, which at the time there weren't GoPros. There were lipstick cameras with a little clamshell with the tape to record it. And you have to be also the one to rig all that stuff up in the place. And you got to get up before everybody else does. Get in the car, go get ice or whatever else crafty, and then pull up to the hotel and wait for everybody else to show up. Like as a PA, you're the bitch. You are the first person that everybody sees, the last person everybody sees before the job's done. So yeah, and then you got to drive them everywhere, and then they start shooting, and you just have to be behind them in the entire time. Hand them a battery when they need a battery. Go charge the batteries if they're in a location somewhere. Get a release. Get releases. How many releases? It just depends. I mean, I'm better at my job, I think, because they whip me into shape as a PA, and I appreciate PAs because I was one of them. And that's also very hard to come by. I don't think a lot of people do. And I may not seem on set like that I appreciate them. I know their job, but I'm too busy doing mine that I can't, But yeah, I mean, I was doing circles. When I moved back to Austin, I was doing circles around people sometimes because I was getting releases on huge jobs, So it's to me, it's like, it's not that hard. Go do it. Just go do it. I've done it, but...
I love anyway. You can tell from the tone of your voice that you what's up. Like, we need to, like, what's the problem here? Like, like,
need to fix it.
Yeah. You have the production mindset.
Those are good people to have too. If you started out as a PA and worked your way up, that's always, I enjoy working with those kind of people versus ones that just like, my parents bought me a camera and now I'm a DP. It's like, okay, yes, you are, but that's great. But you gotta also like, don't be mad if I want to call you for a job that you may seem lesser. Like I want to hire you to be a PA. It's like, well, I don't PA, and it's like, you've only been doing this for a year. Have you ever PA'd? No. You want to do it? Go all day on that kind of stuff.
What about when you first started from doing PA? When was the time you picked up a camera or you were on a shoot as a part of a crew?
Same company, actually. I worked my way with that company to AC and then camera.
What's it? So AC, I assume,
assistant camera.
Assistant camera.
Yeah. An assistant camera in a reality world is very different versus assistant camera for commercial or
Explain.
film. Assistant cameras for reality, it's changing batteries, just making sure all the gear's there, right? An assistant camera for film, while that is a portion of it, the rest of it is making sure it's in focus.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's like such a big thing.
Yeah, or balancing the Movi or Ronin. I mean, it's ACs nowadays, they do a way more than a reality guy used to do. But just because the cameras are different and now it's in film, but it's definitely making sure it's in focus. And not a lot of, like on movie sets and commercials, big ones, you usually have an AC who is the focus puller. Like my job is lighting and framing. His job is focus. And because sometimes you do moves that I can't pull focus, reframe at the same time and have a dolly move. Like, so the AC's job is super important, and it just makes your life way easier too if you work with somebody who's done that. And there's a lot of good guys in town that do it. So
it's a craft to pull focus correctly.
It's a career. In LA,
I agree.
There's guys that are 60, 70 years old that are ACs, and that's what they do.
It's worth its weight in gold if you like, especially if it's the difference between having one take or like 8 takes because they were out of focus. It's like legit.
Yeah, yeah, and it's nothing worse than doing like 20 takes because you can't get the focus right. You know.
Tell me about when you went from AC to camera.
Same company. My AC experience hasn't been all that long, or like I still AC for friends. And I think when I moved back to Austin, I think I AC a little bit as well on some other stuff, but
just from that company alone, like, was it still within the Disney thing?
Yeah, I was still technically, my credit was still a PA, and
you were just like, let me hop on the camera.
I was running camera. They're like, hey, I need you to get on the camera and shoot. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go shoot. The downfall is I didn't get a credit for it or paid for it, but I got the experience of getting behind a camera and shooting. So that was, and then once they finally saw that I was shooting and the stuff wasn't that bad, then I was like, hey, then they started bringing me on to op, but I didn't opt for them that much. I ended up leaving Orlando right when they called me to do season 4 of Hogan Knows Best, and I left back to Texas, and I ended up getting a camera operator position at a live jewelry channel, which is still going on actually right now. So I did that for a year, and it was just operating and shooting, rings and stuff like that. And then moonlighting, doing little reality shows here and there for friends or scripts and stuff like that. So
when you're talking about rings, that's a camera that's not manned by a person, or you actually like just like spinning the jewelry.
No. The jewelry would be on like a turntable, and I'm like holding the camera controls and zooming in or panning and trying to make it artsy. Is like, jewelry
make this cinematic?
Yeah. There's only so much you can do with jewelry, especially, but it was a live show, so it's like you get the experience of doing a live broadcast versus record the tape kind of stuff and making mistakes. And so that was
it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and I went from there to doing hockey at the Texas Star Center. So I was I got to TD because I ended up working. I worked at that home shopping network for quite some time that I ended up TDing a lot. TDing is technical directing. So I was, big control panel, picking camera 1, take camera 2, that kind of stuff. So I ended up getting to cut a couple live shows for the hockey team when FSN would pick up those feeds. So I was a shooter at one point, and then ended up, and shooting hockey is hard, especially when you're shooting on a little camera, because you got to follow that hockey puck and anticipate the hit versus following the puck.
It's crazy watching football when the cameraman doesn't get, like, when the quarterback either hands the ball off or not, and then the camera starts following the person that doesn't have the ball, and then even the viewer, myself, I'm like, oh, dang it, I thought that person had the ball, but it's because the camera was following that action, and then it messes with me, but I can see it because it was like such a good like fake.
It's an art to it, man. Sports guys, there's a reason why the guys that do sports, they're in it until they retire. It's very hard to get in with ESPN.
Framing, I feel like is such a big, because can you talk about when you're shooting something sports wise, not trying to get like artsy with it, because if you say you have the master shot, right, there's only like, you have to know that you have to keep the frame X wide, and you can't like, oh, there's so much action going on right there. Like, you can't get bored at the camera, because you, like, if you start zooming in, then you're like cutting into other people's shots and everything like that.
You get bored on camera.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to know what the job you're doing. If your job is to just shoot a wide shot and just get the action and make sure the camera isn't going to turn off, then that's your job. I mean, that's a great paycheck, because you don't have a lot of responsibility, you know. But yeah, you just have to know what you're getting into. I mean, if that's what you got to do, you know, you're part of a group, right? I mean, that's it's all teamwork. I mean, the whole thing, the whole industry is teamwork. I mean, it's not just, everybody thinks that like being a cinematographer or director is the end game. That's what I want to do. And that's the most glory, you know, being an actor, getting an Oscar, director getting an Oscar, or DP getting an Oscar, or whatever. I mean, that eventually that's what I want to do, but that's, you know, but it takes a lot of people to get those people that Oscar. And that's, it's a team. It's a huge team effort, you know, and people just forget that, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of like the mundane jobs, but a job that just is a job is, I worked at the arena in Atlanta, and just house lights in general. Like during concerts, the amount of power you have. I was working a One Direction concert, nice. and I got to work with them twice, but and quote unquote work with them. But running house lights, the light tech is or the light operator is talking to you on the headphones, and they're like, all right, house lights, and then when you hit that button, just like all of these 9-year-olds go screaming into panic, and I'm like, man,
it's a cool power thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I remember, because like when I was working my way up through the ranks, I remember looking to the guy who was like supervising, and like, you know what's gonna happen when I hit this button? And he's like, you are overthinking this way too much. Yeah, but it's kind of cool still, isn't it? And like I hit it, and everybody screams. But it's like one of those things where people know that when the lights go off, the concert's gonna start. You know, right. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a cool. You get power out of it, you know. Yeah. And you don't get that very often, so you take it when you can get it, you know.
Yeah. So you shoot some stuff out at the racetrack, right?
I've yeah, a little bit.
What is the difference between those kind of cameras and the stuff that we're talking about on film?
Depends on the shoot.
Yeah, so I'm actually really curious about this.
Yeah. I've shot like 4 things at the racetrack, and I'm usually, when they do a race, they bring in crew, or they hire the live sports guys here in town to shoot that kind of stuff.
And we're talking about Circuit de Americas here in Austin.
Yeah. And I know a bunch of those guys that actually, they work every sports event. They work basketball, you know, that kind of stuff. So they usually do those kind of shows. The stuff that I've gotten hired to do at the racetrack is more sponsored based, commercial based.
Promoting whatever that event is going to be at that thing.
And I did get hired to do a live for the rally racing. So like a company out in Finland was looking for camera guys. I don't know how they found my name, but they got it.
Top of Google search, man. I told you at the beginning of the podcast.
They're like, oh, you shoot racing, because I have a lot of, you know, I've shot a whole bunch of car racing stuff. And so I got hired to use these 1980s cameras that are so massive, it takes 2 people to carry the damn thing to pick it up and put it in. Black and white viewfinder kind of stuff. And those are interesting. And then I've worked ones where I shoot with my Red or shoot with an Alexa and run around. Yeah. Just, I mean, it's all over the place. The place is pretty neat though. I mean, it's a gorgeous facility.
For the broadcast cameras, how is it, because you're manning it, how is it pulling focus and things of that nature as opposed to your cinema cameras? Because that's, I feel like we were talking about with the AC, that is such a pivotal thing. And even if you're doing it live, that's even a bigger asset.
You're still pulling focus. You're the guy that's pulling focus.
Is it on a ring, or is it like by your hand?
It's on it depends on the rig. The bigger cameras, yeah, it's like you know, where your tripod, you have the handle for your tripods. You have 2 rigs to turn on one side for zoom, focus on the other. Right. But the whole thing is wired to a truck, and that truck has another guy that irises for you, colors for you, and all that kind of stuff. So that guy has, depending on how many cameras he has, 5 or 6 cameras that he's looking at and shading. Shading is irising. And they will do all that kind of stuff. So you're literally just framing, focusing, and zooming. And if you're a handheld, it's the same thing, actually. It's all remote, done by somebody else in a truck. So But again, it's a team effort. So.
Before a shoot like that happens, are you guys all coordinating with each other to be like, hey, make sure you're at this kind of white balance. Make sure all this stuff is like this. I'm going to be, go ahead.
It's a full day prep on those kind of things. Like they're prepping the day before, you're prepping all the cameras, you put them where they need to go, and then you kind of run through the expectations of the day and how you're going to shoot it. And, there's a lot of work that goes into sports shooting. And I don't have that much experience doing it, but I know that like it's a huge effort. I mean, even the truck that they bring in, I mean, it's a semi truck, or it's two semi trucks. One semi truck has all the gear plus the director with the 30 TVs that are all in there for all the camera stuff, and then they have another truck that's just for power, just running a generator, and it's the size of a truck.
I remember that from so when you're setting up stages for with the audio stagehand background, you run all the power first because all of those cables have to like run and do all of those runs, and then you have to set all of that stuff on stage first before you can run any other stuff because the things that need power, you run those, and then the lights are run it's a whole hierarchy of things. But
cabling is the word, I think.
If there was a way to have no cables, I feel like there would be like so many jobs that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and that's the route it's going too. It's all wireless now. So I mean, wireless video feeds and stuff. And I think at some point when 4K is more mainstream than it is now, like when regular TV is in 4K, then I think like the technology will be there for the wireless aspect of it to just be all that way. And I know a guy right now that's doing that. Like he's going out shooting sports, and it's two camera guys shooting, like a soccer match, but it's the video feed is sent to a studio in Austin, and they're in Minneapolis shooting it, and that person in Austin is cutting it, running replay, doing all that kind of stuff, and then sending it out on the web. So like we're already in that phase of technology. It's just crazy. The old gear, like the massive 80-pound, 100-pound camera, at some point those are going to be obsolete. And then once those become obsolete, I think that's when you start seeing the wireless stuff more so. But right now, it's so expensive to replace those cameras that it's going to forever be a cabling show.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, that's not something I necessarily know a lot about because I don't do those that often, but I do them because I do everything. So
you work a camera.
I stay busy. I stay busy and pay the bills, that's also like kind of the nice thing is like I can do a whole bunch of stuff, which makes me desirable for some gigs. Cause like, he can do anything. So it doesn't matter, or creative, we'll hire him for this or whatever. And then, I work a lot, but I work decently priced, where I know like some people will work for next to nothing, but they work all the time. And I like working very little.
You value your time.
I do value my time. Yeah. Especially now.
Yeah. You have a kid. I completely understand.
Yeah.
I find that those like backstory things and just like the little tidbits, like even if you're only doing a little bit of live stuff, that's the kind of back end behind the scenes production things that
you learn things.
A lot of people
I think
here.
Doing that kind of stuff helps you on a different project. You could take one, what you learn from one project and incorporate it into another, even though it's a totally different type of shoot. But if you at least experience those things, I think that helps you in the long run versus only doing one thing. I think only doing one thing makes you very desirable for people who are just looking for that. Like there's DPs that only do a specific type of shooting, so they get hired all the time, but just for that, and they can corner the market in that area. Like slow-mo guys, right? Like people that just do slow-mo with like a robotic camera, which I really want a robotic camera. And
are you talking about a Phantom?
Phantom is the camera specifically that shoots like.
Oh, you're talking about the
robot.
Yeah.
But I want the Phantom and the robot. But like if I got that and that's all I did, that's all I'm gonna get it called for. And there'll be times that I work months with no work, or there'll be times that I won't work at all for months on end.
Just show up to a wedding and just be the guy with the robotic like red or like a Phantom for a slow-mo gig.
You never know, man. Or you can work all the time, but it's only that specific thing. But I think you kind of limit yourself to only doing that you won't work all the time.
Yeah.
Or at least for a good amount of money. But,
Yeah, I get it's similar in the YouTube space. It's like you could niche down, like on my channel. It's like I have podcasts, and then I had the next video. Well, this is kind of related, but like I just did one on rehabilitation, physical therapy, and then my next video will probably be like, how do you plug a microphone into a computer? It's like there's a disconnect there, but these are the things that I like, and as the audience grows, I find that it's similar people. Like there's so many people out there that are like, cool, we like this kind of thing. And then they're into the kind of same things. They understand that it's like, oh, it's all production stuff, you know?
Right.
So that's what I like.
I think in the end, just getting behind a camera and shooting is going to be better than not doing it, you know?
Creating.
So
yeah. Can you give the listeners an idea of the spectrum of places where you shoot?
I have shot in 48 states. The only states I have not been to are Vermont and Oregon.
Oh, Vermont, man.
You would assume that I was going to say Alaska and Hawaii.
No, I wasn't.
Some people think that it's like, oh, you haven't, you say 48 states, it's the lower 48, you shot on all. But, yeah. I've shot everywhere except for those 2 states. And a lot of it was I was doing shipping wars on A&E, so I got to travel all the time and shoot stuff. But I've shot in Alaska 3 times for totally different things. Same thing for Hawaii. I think Hawaii is one of the coolest places that I've been to. Any
place you pointed the camera, you're like, yep, this is a good shot.
It's all beautiful. I mean, when you do a travel show, it is very hard not to get a good shot. I mean, it's just, if it's picturesque, it's going to be, you have to really screw up not to get something pretty.
Where were you at in Hawaii? Were you like up on the mountains?
The 3 times I was there, yeah, I did a show called Hawaii Air Rescue on the Weather Channel. And I shot the Sizzle there the year before. And yeah, it was a lot to do with like flying in a plane on how crazy the weather is, which is really not that crazy. We just had to make it all up.
You heard it here on the Passion in Progress show.
I mean, there was turbulence. I mean, I think that was the hardest thing there. But it was medevacing people who had emergencies, whether they fell off a cliff or broke their leg or, surfing. Or
was it legitly like actually people had...
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds serious.
I filmed a person who I think died, if I remember correctly. He died in the hospital, but he got in a major car wreck, I think, in Maui, and I was stationed in Maui, and we flew him to Honolulu, did the whole riding in the air medevac, doing that whole thing, and I think like he ended up dying. That was the sizzle reel to sell the show, and then it ended up being the first episode in the show, was that whole experience, and it was pretty heartbreaking, and it was real stuff. So the rest of the time, it was people with like minor aches and pains, or they sprained an ankle doing something stupid on the beach, or no shark bites or anything like that, or surfing. But like that show, like it was, we had times I was on call 24 hours a day because if something happened, you have to, and you're alone on one island, and you had your rest of your crews are also doing it on the other islands, so you're kind of by yourself, and then you all end up meeting in the end in Honolulu and back and forth. But you do a hiking tour on that island, you take the camera and you shoot it. So that was kind of that experience. I mean, it was really cool. Got to see a lot of Hawaii. And
out of the 48 states, what was your favorite place?
I like Alaska. Alaska's cool.
Was it because of like what you were shooting, or just like everything besides the shoot, like what you were like hanging out and everything afterwards and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I think everything. Alaska is sentimental to me because I also got engaged on that show.
Ooh. On the show?
Yeah.
How would you explain this?
People that know me will know that I take advantage of the opportunities that are given to me. Like I met my wife on a music video. We got engaged on a TV show.
Was it actually part of, like, were you being filmed, or was it just like
No, we were being filmed. Yeah. So on that experience, I got hired to do Alaska Wingman on National Geographic. They had already been filming for a while, but they needed more crew and stuff. So I flew out for a month to go to Alaska. And then I kind of was thinking after the shoot, I was going to fly my girlfriend because I already got here for free. They paid for the flight. So I was going to pay for her to fly up. And then I was going to hire one of the subjects, like one of the guys that flies the plane, to fly us up and land somewhere, and I'll propose or whatever.
Thing.
My producer got word of that and was like, can we, because they were going to continue to film after I left, and they're like, can we film that? We'll pay for the plane ticket.
You're like,
yeah. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. That's perfect. I told my girlfriend that, hey, by the way, because she had been on camera for other projects that I had done. It was like, hey, they just need more subject matter. So they're just going to film us taking a tour, a bunch of Texans taking a tour in Alaska. She's like, okay. So that's what, and she met the crew the night before. As she was flying to Alaska, I was filming with the subject talking about, hey, I'm going to propose to my girl. Like I was on camera, I think that was the only other time I've been on camera other than this right now. Yeah. What we ended up doing was we took off on a frozen lake on a Bush pilot plane.
Already sounds really awesome.
You're going to hate me. Most of my friends hate me for this story, but Mount McKinley is over there, the Denali National Park. And we took off on a frozen lake, landed on another frozen lake on top of a mountain, and I proposed there. But the view was hidden because the weather wasn't that great, so you couldn't see Mount McKinley, unfortunately. But
too bad.
How we did it and how we ended up landing there is we faked an emergency landing.
No!
My wife did not know this. When she gets freaked out, she gets quiet. And I was holding a GoPro filming her, and we had a camera guy in the front seat filming, and the pilot's yelling, Mayday, Mayday. And of course, for us filmmakers
Dude, I'm getting antsy just hearing this.
For us as filmmakers, we knew that Mayday, Mayday, cut to commercial.
Yeah.
So that you come back to the commercial and we land, and then I proposed to her, and of course she said yes, obviously. So yeah, that's how we ended up getting proposed. So Alaska has a nice little feeling in my heart, and I think it's a pretty cool place. I've been there 3 other times, and it's always amazing. So
what was the hardest thing that you've ever tried to shoot, or like where you had to get into like some sort of like position to like get a shot or something, like the hardest shot to pull off?
I would say hardest mentally was filming a toilet.
And this wasn't jewelry.
No. I was filming mentally, like filming boring stuff.
How long did you have to film the toilet?
I mean, it was a couple hours. We were filming hospital house cleaning, so that one was hard. And I've filmed a lot of like hard stuff. That one was hard. I mean, I think the hardest stuff is usually filming content wise. That's just like,
what did this entail that you had to film a toilet for that long?
They're filming a cleaning lady, showing them how to clean a toilet. So
okay, so it was like a educational thing.
Yeah. Sorry,
I thought this was like a reality TV show, the toilet, plot twist, whatever thing. But no, okay, this makes much more sense now.
Mental, that's definitely a mental thing. I think other ones are like filming subject matter that's very difficult, or even like, filming 600 Pound Life and hearing people's life stories on how they got to where they are. Super sad, that kind of stuff is definitely hard. Physically, I mean, I've thrown up a couple times in helicopters that beat me down a little bit, but I've had several. I almost got rolled over by a Jeep.
Well, obviously it wasn't intentional, but
right.
Was the shot like you had to be in a certain position to get that?
Yeah. It was a series that we were going for Discovery Channel, and I was shooting on my Red with a huge lens. So the rig itself is 45 pounds already, and it's a race with dune buggies that rednecks would build, these massive 500 horsepower dune buggies that go uphill, and it's rock crawling in Nashville. And so you're always at an incline. So you're filming at an incline. So if you got to go on one side of the track, go further up, you got to climb with 45 pounds on your back to get up to the top, So you're having to do that. And by the end of the day, you're just worn out and spent and stuff. And I'm filming on one side, and then my producer wants me to get a different shot from the other side of the track. So of course I go over there. He comes with me, and that one particular truck ends up going up, and it's on my reel, and you'll see it. But there's a GoPro of me behind a group of trees, and the truck gets up on its back legs and rolls down. So it starts rolling down the hill and nails the tree that I'm literally holding. I'm holding on it, like at that point I stopped filming, and I was just holding on to the tree for dear life, hoping that tree is not going to break. And I could have ran, but if I ran left or right and that truck hit that tree in one way or the other, it could have spun around and hit me. So my best bet was to stay behind a bunch of trees and hope that those trees were going to hold it. And it did. But people were yelling, but I shot everything, and the GoPro got that part. Usually when shit hits the fan, I zoom out and point the camera where I'm looking. Like the helicopter crash that I was filming in.
I like how you just like say that nonchalantly.
There's a segue into the other one. It was a helicopter crash shooting another sizzle reel in West Texas, of people shooting nets with a net gun in a helicopter to capture wild animals that are on this ranch, to transport these animals to another ranch. You know, it's like a game management kind of thing. Which is the craziest thing. It's not the craziest thing I've shot. It's one of the craziest things I've seen. Is, you know, being in a helicopter, flying super low, hauling ass, chasing a deer while you got ATVs behind chasing the helicopter, and the cowboy on the left side of the helicopter shoots this net gun, nets the animal, jumps out 20 feet while the helicopter's hovering, jumps 20 feet to wrangle, you know, like, I mean, it was just like mind blowing watching this stuff.
Yeah.
It never made it to air at all. It was, they didn't want to see Bambi, you know, crying, so it didn't make it to the show. But
the helicopter crashed?
He turned on that day. It was super windy, so he turned, and I guess the wind hit it at some point, and he lost lift. And thankfully, it wasn't like a huge crash. I mean, we skidded, but we were 30, 40 feet up, and it wasn't a nosedive or anything. He pretty much flared it and landed, and we just skid all the way. So when that happened, I'm zoomed out, hanging on, saying, oh shit. And I'm, you know, if I wanted to look right or left, I'm just doing this. I'm not even looking in the viewfinder. So everybody's like, I can't believe you shot all that. How did you? I was like,
I'm just going to keep my life and shoot some stuff.
Yeah. You know, that's just how it ends up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one was kind of crazy, which is how I ended up getting into drones at that point.
What did you, after that happened, were you like, yeah, I don't want to get in a helicopter for like another 2 seconds?
Immediately after that happened, one of the co-pilots gets out, helicopter's still running. He looks up, he's like, everything's good, boss. Everybody gets back in. We take off. We keep doing their job. And so the next thing that I remember is we're hovering over, we're not hovering, we're flying over a bunch of wild ram, a huge group, 30 or 40 ram. And I put the camera down and I start throwing up over all the ram. I just got motion sickness because it's, you know, like looking in a viewfinder with an earpiece, and it's a whole, you know, I got airsick doing that with Border Patrol agents too. In a helicopter, you just get airsick. I think I get airsick more now because I'm older, but yeah.
That's
some crazy stuff. I've shot some stupid shit.
What about your profile picture in IG when you're scuba diving? What's that stuff?
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Have you shot underwater more than once?
Yes.
So what does that entail, and how is that different from shooting above water?
Oh, that's a whole thing. I shot that with my Red as well, so, and a very expensive lens. So, I was doing a sponsored documentary shoot for Finlandia Vodka, and we were going to film a bunch of people doing extreme things. One of them was this shark diving. What this guy does, he takes people on shark dives and tries to lure them in so people who are snorkeling can see a shark up close.
Immediately, if you call me up to do a shark shoot, I'm going to be like, nope.
Oh, I immediately was like, yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm telling you.
But they were like, yeah, we kind of needed underwater and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm scuba certified. I hadn't scuba dived in 12 years since college. And also, you fake it till you make it, right? I mean, I've done a lot of jobs where I said I knew what I was doing and I didn't, and everything worked out all right. You know, like I've never scuba dived and held a massive camera, but I'm going to do it. You know, why not? And it was probably not the safest thing. I was the only one scuba diving. So, and I threw up a lot because I got seasick
while you were underwater.
Yeah. There was some hurricane out in the Atlantic, and the rig itself you can't pick up unless you have 3 other people helping you. And my AC helped me, and our sound guy helped me pick it up, put it in the camera, put it in the water. And so I'm holding the camera, and I'm getting, you know, 10 feet deep or whatever. And, but all day we had just been fishing basically for these sharks. Like they hadn't showed up, and it was cloudy. It was gross. And I think by the 6th hour, we had this one window of light. All of a sudden, just the clouds went away. We had light, and then a hammerhead showed up. And at that point, I thought I was getting in a cage, which is why we had a zoom lens on this camera, and the rig was so big. But there was no time, and I was like, "Give me the camera." Grab the camera, and I just basically start pointing at it. And at that point,
you're in the water?
I'm in the water. He's in the water too, and I can't see what I'm shooting because the mask was, it had bubbles all over, when you're breathing through a snorkel, and not a snorkel, a respirator and stuff. And so like I didn't have enough time to really focus in on what I was going to do. But since I was tethered to the boat, the AC was going to focus, zoom, and record. So they were seeing everything. So I basically just pointed where the shark was and just moved around.
I feel like you have to have that, especially if you're like focusing on, like you're saying with underwater. Just getting the framing is, it was so much of the battle.
It was such a difficult setup. Also because I got seasick, so I was chumming the water and putting the respirator back in and shooting. And then another shark showed up. So we had 2 sharks. But, he taught you that, like, hey, don't, I guess sharks smell fear. So you shouldn't, don't back down. And I felt safe because I had a massive rig, torpedo looking camera that if a shark was going to come at me, I was just going to push that thing at it and hope that he eats the camera. That's what was going on in my head.
That makes complete sense. Oh my god.
Probably not the best thing. But
I wouldn't even get in the water, man.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, and that's not the first thing. So after that, this year actually, I got to shoot underwater. But I've shot underwater in like a pool several times with a smaller setup where I'm the one pulling focus and zooming in a much more
controlled
environment. And then recently, I got to scuba dive for a documentary. Out here in San Marcos at the Aqua Arena Springs or whatever. And it's a 20 feet deep, crystal clear water. Like you don't get that in Austin. Yeah, that was cool. Like I'll shoot underwater all day now. I mean, I think it's such a cool experience.
I think it's legit. I just don't want to do it with sharks.
No. Just pretend there's something else. Huge dolphins or something.
You can throw the camera at them when they come to eat you. I'm hoping that ended up airing.
The funny thing was, with the shark diving one, they used probably 3 or 4 shots of mine and used more GoPro stuff than anything else because we were on a zoom lens because I thought we were going to be super far back.
Yeah.
So we need a zoom to do it. And they, in the end, liked the wider shots up close. And we had GoPros everywhere. So they ended up using more GoPro stuff than, so it's a little disappointing, but I got stuff from my reel, and that's all like for me that mattered, And I got experience. I think the experience of it is probably one of the cooler things.
Now you know to ask.
Yeah, I know what to look for. I know to have somebody else in the water with me. So it's just, trial by fire, man. You got to just figure it out and lie your way halfway through it just to get it.
Any other crazy spots?
I did a show for TNT called Martial Law, and I was filming with the U.S. Marshals, which is also fun. You do a lot of stakeouts and then busting down doors and really violent offenders kind of stuff. And that made it to air. And the one episode I did, they were searching for a guy who had shot his girlfriend and on the highway was shooting people.
Jesus.
On the highway, shooting at the cops, shooting at cars and stuff. He ended up barricading himself in a abandoned house, and the cops, the marshals finally found out where he was. Everybody on the crew, and we had like a camera crew of 4 crews, each crew had like 5 or 6 people attached to it. Everybody was on vacation except for my crew. It was me, a sound guy, and a PA. Everybody had the weekend off, and I took that weekend to shoot. I was getting paid, so at the time I was trying to buy a red, so and they found the guy, and I'm riding with this one dude who ended up pulling straight in front of the house. Like we had the most amount of access that we had the entire show. Because most of the time on the show, like we had restrictions. We had to stay further back. We couldn't, pull up to these locations very far, and we had to shoot long lens and stuff. This one, like it just happened that way. So everybody gets out, We get out, and I'm kind of using the car as just like a protection buffer
to not get shot.
To not get shot because he had a gun. And I'm filming the cops, filming the U.S. Marshals walking up to the front window of this house. And they're in front of the window and they're kind of looking. And then all of a sudden they say, he's got a gun. And they fan out on either side of the window. So they're left or right of the window, right? Mm-hmm. Directly in front of that window is me and the car and the camera. And at that point, I try to get and I'm a skinny dude. I try to get so tiny that the one little strip of metal between, from where I'm shooting, like hopefully this guy is not going to point the gun directly in my face and shoot me. So I'm like filming up here, putting the camera above the hood, doing all that kind of stuff. And it was a whole day ordeal. Like SWAT showed up, helicopters, and I'm filming that. My PA is also shooting. My sound guy is shooting as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you just like, here, take a cell phone.
we're stuck. We couldn't move around anywhere else. We were stuck literally within a 12-foot radius of this car that we had to get as whatever we could. And he ended up barricading himself in a closet and shot himself. And they aired it. They aired the noise of him shooting himself. So that was the first episode of that one. So that one was probably scarier because I had more time to think about it than a car rolling over or the shark because I was sick, So that one was brutal. And then I had another one where we're South Texas filming cartel stuff, where we're going 110 miles an hour to chase this one guy who had 400 pounds of marijuana in the back of his truck, and they get him down this dirt road. He finally bails out and takes off. And so I'm filming the whole thing, So, that one was scary, but not as scary as I think.
Well, it's still like you're in the situation.
Yeah, you kind of live the crazy thing about the U.S. Marshal one is I have another buddy of mine that also did that. And, you spend the hour and days prepping of like trying to capture this guy. And it's like boring content, but you need the content. But your heart starts beating when you find the guy and you're going to bust down the door. And it is such an adrenaline rush. It was the craziest experience. And the moment it's over, you want to fall asleep. You're just so tired, But we were like, okay, when are we doing that again? Are we going to do it again? Like, who's the next guy? Well, let's go. We got time, right? Because you just wanted it. Because at that point, I have the adrenaline. I want to do it more. But knowing that it's like, hey, this is stupid to film this. So, yeah.
When you do that, and you're caught behind the car, and you said it was a whole day ordeal, what do you do about footage? Like, do you run out of like SD or like batteries or SD cards or all that stuff?
You have to bring all of that with you and hope that you're not going to run out and shoot conservatively,
Because in my mind, it's kind of like, I don't even know why I'm comparing this to a wedding. But it's one of those things like if you miss that moment,
you're screwed.
You're done. Yeah. So
weddings are good learning practice.
You're sitting there, and I'm assuming a lot of that footage is just like dead footage. But then literally you out of like 5 hours of doing something, then you get that one moment.
Yep. It's hard shooting docs and reality that way, where it's not somewhat produced, where you can have downtime. Okay, we're going to shoot. Like, I did the CNN series I did, High Profits. It was more of a produced thing, but it was still a documentary where we said, hey, this is the situation that you're going to be here. We're going to film this. And so we would get there ahead of time, prep it, put camera angles, light it a little bit, So it was a much well-produced docu-series where on stuff like that, you just have to roll the entire time. For that 1 minute of gold, because it's more of definitely a reality. Yeah. That's why the editors get paid more, I think, because they have to go through all that footage with like 5 cameras, Transcribing helps. So
that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
It sounds so horrible.
It's an art for them, I think, to piece something together. I feel like I don't want that job.
It's probably a whole week before you even start making it. Well, I don't know, but you probably get much faster at it, but like even a whole week of just getting the footage to a place where it's all synced and into some sort of sequential timeline.
It's an army, I think, in post. Like it's not just one guy doing it. It's several people going over that one particular piece of footage, you know, to get it all. It's like you having like 5 assistants, you know, but it's again, it's an army.
That sounds amazing, by the way.
I know, right? To have all that. Yeah. Just every day. I just want five assistants, you know.
It just so happens that you have an ambulance, right? Can you tell me the story behind it? Because you don't use it for ambulance things, right?
No, that's correct. One of my best friends and I, drunk at a bar in Lubbock, were talking about how, because we both own a whole bunch of camera gear, and you know, we're like, oh, maybe we'll get a van or something, just share it, you know, just like a Sprinter van or a box truck. And I, drunk, was saying it'd be really nice to have like electrical outlets and air conditioning in the back of a box truck. Like, what if we get something else, like an ambulance or something? His eyes lit up so much that we were both like, yeah, let's look that up. And I immediately like Googled, you know, used ambulances, and that was a thing. Like, I didn't know you could buy a used ambulance, but you can, and people turn them into campers. And so we bought an ambulance like after a couple months, and converted it into a camera truck.
So you use it specifically for camera things?
Correct, yeah.
What's the actual name of your ambulance then?
Gosh, yeah. Its Instagram is The Cambulance.
It has its own Instagram.
The Cambulance. Yes, and it is The Cambulance. I'm going to make t-shirts and whole thing with The Cambulance on it.
Love it.
Yeah, because we were looking up like other ambulances that people had converted, and they've called them the Wambulance, oh man, there's so many like spin-offs of, they would just add bulance to the end of it. And so we were like, yeah, this will be the Cambulance, you know. So, but yeah, we basically bought a 18-year-old truck that is it's a diesel with a lot of problems. We put wood floors in it. We gutted out some parts of it, so one side of it has like an area to put all your equipment, you know, in shelving. The other side of it has where you could put all your cases and Pelican cases, and you know, and then you could put 2 camera carts in there, put all your stuff in. And then there's an area where from the outside you can put a fully built camera and slide it in. Usually, like if you go from set to set on a job, you have to strap it to a car seat, because you don't want to mess up your camera. This time around, I was like, what if we want 2 people to sit and we only have 2 seats? So we turned this one area that it was like a cabinet, and you put your fully built camera and just lock it into place. And at the same time, you could still have it on and running because there's AC power in there. And so you could have all your batteries going. I put a nitrogen tank in it because it had a built-in oxygen tank. So we replaced it with a nitrogen tank so you could do canned air built into the thing. So you could sit there prepping your camera on your camera cart and just use the canned air to clean it. And it's just a built-in thing, you know. And the great thing is it's air conditioned in the inside. It's probably 5 inches thick insulation all the way around this thing. So it never gets hot, never gets cold in there, which is really nice. And it's got shore power, so you can have it plugged in to a house, not running.
That's legit.
While you're shooting, and have all your stuff in this place. And it's got all the compartments on the outside. So like the nice thing is, you know, it's got an area on the outside for your tripod and Dana Dolly on the other side, C-stands, you know, whatever. So we were trying to keep it not a grip truck per se. I don't want to compete with anybody because it's not an ambulance. You can't really fit a whole bunch of stuff grip wise. So it's like, it's perfect for a camera because it's nice and sterile, even though I think several hundred people probably died in that thing because it's 18 years old. But it's definitely it's a conversation starter for sure. Like people are like, you did what? You know, but the moment we pull up, everybody's like, this is awesome, man. You gotta keep with it. So it's in the shop right now, but we're working on it.
How long did it take to gut it and do all that stuff?
Thankfully, we didn't have to like gut it. I mean, we kept most of the stuff in there. We just had to get rid of like a lot of the ambulance part of it, you know, like, so by the time it went on a job, it was probably 3 months since we had it to it going out on a specific job, but it didn't have everything yet. You know, we were still working on it. So, and we're still working on it. I mean, we just put a stereo in it, and right now we're getting the engine worked on it. That's a whole ordeal. So by the end of it, we'll probably spend more than you should spend on a truck.
A truck that's an ambulance.
Ambulance. I own an ambulance.
Does it still have the siren and everything?
Still has a siren. and it works.
Is that like, is there a legality there where you can't?
Yeah. We had to get rid of all the red lights, the front red lights that are up there, because you can't have anything. Basically, can't really have anything red, lighting wise, and have the strobes working and stuff like that. And then the siren, you technically have to disconnect it all. But I don't have a horn. The horn doesn't work. And when I was getting the inspection, I was like, well, I have this one. And I just hit it. And he was like, yeah, I'll pass you on that one. So we just can't use it per se. But you had to get rid of all that. And you have to get rid of all the logos that say ambulance on it. I wanted to put the Cambulance.
That's way too close.
But yes, like people would just start freaking out. Because when we first bought it, people were letting me in the lanes. Like they assumed I was an ambulance and I'm driving. And, like it was really easy to get through traffic. Now it's just like, I'm just another truck, but still an ambulance. It's kind of cool.
Oh, so when you first bought it, it had all of the decals and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It had all the decals.
That's a sketch thing. I feel like there's people that could just do that or use that for wrong purposes. But
yeah. And if you have an HOA, it's not necessarily something that they're going to allow. Thankfully, I live in a place that doesn't have it and it sits in my driveway. So my wife not a big fan of it sitting in the driveway because one of our cars has to sit out on the road. But man, it is convenient. Like I've since it's been at the shop, I've done like 4 or 5 jobs, and I've had to load into my truck, and and I don't want to ruin that truck anymore. And so it's a pain in the butt. Like I got to disassemble the camera cart and put it in. You pull up in an ambulance and just wheel the cart out. I mean, I'm ready to go. It's pretty nice. It's definitely a looker for people. I think they're like, what?
That's awesome.
What'd you pull up in?
Just a person knowing somebody that owns an ambulance for cameras. That's a legit thing.
They're not that expensive.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
well, I feel like they probably have a lot of miles on them.
Oh yeah, this one had 280.
That is a lot of miles.
280,000 miles on it.
Jeez.
With a lot of problems. Because it rode hard. Right now, everybody's telling me it's a rust bucket, and I'm refusing to get rid of it. But if we get rid of it, we're just gonna buy another one.
That's how
we're at that point. We're like, yes, if we sell it, which it is on sale, it's on Craigslist. And if we sell it, we're just gonna put that money into another one and get a newer one that I can physically stand up in, because it's not 6 feet tall, and I'm 6 feet tall, so I have to crouch down in a little bit, but. Yeah, we basically have branded ourselves as these are the guys that own this ambulance, the Cambulance. So now it's like, yeah, we have to get another one. We can't get a box truck. We're
the Cambulance crew.
We're in the Cambulance, and I think it's gonna stick. I'm surprised nobody's done it. That's the other thing. It's like it's so convenient for camera because of the electrical portions of it, plus the oxygen and everything else. Like, why hasn't anybody thought that up? But.
Last question I ask everybody is to where you're at today and what you're doing. And I know you said you wanted to be X amount of further down the line of where you're at, but for where you're at today in your profession, following your passion, what advice would you give to somebody that's just starting out?
Just starting out. I mean, I would say just start shooting. I mean, that's, shoot your own stuff. I think like getting behind the camera and creating content, I think is one step further than most people, just talking about, hey, I'm going to go do this and not doing it doesn't help.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing.
Doing it helps. Like, yeah, you can study and you can go to film school. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. But if you're not doing it, if you're not behind the camera and practicing that craft, I think I've seen that on your podcast. Actually, people saying the exact same thing, but it's absolutely true. Like just doing it helps,
If you were the guy back in the PA Disney time, what would you tell him?
Don't be an asshole.
There you go.
Keep your relationships, and then just enjoy it. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of the best job, like you complain, I complain, but in the end of the day, it's like, I kind of have a kick-ass job, man. This is like, I'm getting paid to do what, that's kind of how I'm looking at it now. I used to be an asshole. I still kind of am sometimes. I'm a hard ass. I expect a lot out of people, just because I've been there, but being considerate of other people and their lifestyle or whatever they're going through, but also do what they do, and understanding what it takes to do those kind of things, I think kind of goes a long way.
I think that goes with anything in life.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think like keeping those relationships, I think helps. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, networking. And if you can't, you know, network correctly in the sense of like having, like, for you, for instance, like I've known you for what, 2 years, but did I really know you?
I mean, I was like, I worked with your footage.
Yeah, exactly. Like just maintaining those relationships, I think helps because, and this, my business partner has always said this, you never know, your PA one day will be your director the next. If you're an asshole to your PA, he or she is never going to hire you to shoot, you know, like that PA could go on and win an Oscar for something. And you want to be that person that made that lasting effect on them as a PA to want to bring you along on their success. And I think if you don't treat others that way, you know, you're just going to put yourself at one plane and stay at that rate the whole time. And that's it, you know.
Probably throw up out the side. And then
yeah, exactly.
put the camera down.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Bringing all the metaphors back into play.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. And I think it's like I said, it's more than just the production world. I think the whole aspect of networking, where like people talk about it, I think in college and all that kind of stuff, but I think I even brought this up on another podcast where if you could get a degree in like networking, then do that. Like whatever, regardless of the job you go into, like just if you could go to college to get be cool around people and just be that person that like connects other people with people and just be the cool guy or woman type of thing.
I'll add to that. It's if I had learned how to network and pay my taxes, be a business person, I think those two things in the end would help. You know, like I don't want to be in debt for the rest of my life, but if I made financial decisions at a younger age, like knowing how to pay my taxes or pay my bills. Yeah. I think business school and communication school, I think, are the only two things you really need to do. Everything else is trial by fire. Learning how to frame or light, you got to do that on the job. Where can people find you? You can find me on Instagram. It's Mandrew360. Or both my websites, 360studios.com or mabarrera.com. Awesome. Which to spell that is Barrera. And if you want to find me, I'm at Javier Mercedes X on all things social. If you did enjoy this podcast, would you please pull out your iPhone, if it's not already out, and write me a review on iTunes, because that would be the most bestest, greatest thing. Till next time, live a life of abundance, and I will see you guys on the next episode.